Hello! In this video I'm going to show you the techniques and method that I used to create this thanks card. The materials involved are really quite simple and basic, and probably in most of your craft rooms. I've got my turbo glue pen for some precision glue application, got a couple of colours of ink pad that I've chosen based on the cardstock. I've got some gems and pearls, various different ones. Then I've got the Delightful Sentiment Thanks cut foil and embossed die, and I'm going to be using the ombre inking letterpress technique this time around. I'm also going to be cutting the design from multiple colours of cardstock and layering them up. That's the secret to this look. Got some foam pads there as well to layer it up. I've then got a bow die, which I'm going to cut from yellow cardstock. Then a tag die that I'm going to cut from two different pieces of cardstock. Obviously, if you don't have a bow die or a tag die, you can crop out bits of paper for the tags with a pair of scissors, and of course make a paper bow from a template. I've also got some textured white cardstock, which I'm going to layer onto some yellow cardstock, and that's going to go onto the front of an A6 card. So, jumping ahead, I've already matted and layered the textured white cardstock onto the yellow, and now I'm just using some foam pads to layer that onto the front of the A6 card. I like this method because it really does give the card a little bit of a dimension without making it too bulky. While I'm doing that, quick thanks for all of the positive feedback on Facebook and the blog. And of course, if you don't know where my blog is, please do visit www.gentlemancrafter.com. There's many more ideas and inspiration for all things creativity, not just dies and not just the scan and cut. I also do sewing, tapestry, mixed media, so it's worth a look when you get a minute. This layering technique, by the way, also allows me to use sheets of foam rather than the individual fiddly little foam pads. Just using a bit of white glue there to add a bit of extra stick once the cardstock's been stuck down. I always like to take my time doing this stage because obviously if it's wonky, it's the first thing you'll notice. Okay, that's the card done. I've sped this section up a little bit because I've assumed most of you know what die cutting is, but basically I'm running through, as I mentioned at the start of this video, the tag on two different colours of cardstock and then the bow in the yellow cardstock. Then I moved on to cut the thanks die from three different colours of cardstock. No inking, no foiling, no nothing, just using it as a regular cutting die. Now I've put a piece of plain white cardstock on with a hinge of masking tape, and then I started inking the die using the pigment inks that I chose, and I'm using two colours here to give it a shaded effect once it's die cut. If you've not heard of these cut foil and embossed dies before, they're used for hot foiling and die cutting, but there are many other techniques that you can achieve with them, like this one, and they also plain emboss as they're die cutting, so you can see in just one pass I've got the die cut shape and the inked design. Sometimes the ink can make the cards a little harder to release, but as you saw, it came away from the die perfectly. I just need to take my time releasing it from the main piece of cardstock. seem to be getting lots of bits off my cutting mats lately, so I think it's time for a clean up in the craft room soon. Okay, that's all of the elements cut. So a quick speed through the sticking process. Basically, I'm taking each layer, applying glue with the turbo glue pen because it's got such a fine tip applicator, and then offsetting them on the previous layer. If you're doing this, you could obviously work light to dark, or have a rainbow of colours, or as I'm doing, working dark to light, with the lightest being my topmost layer. It's a very effective style, looks kind of 70s, I think. But if you choose the colours wisely according to your main overall colour scheme, it really does make that sentiment stand out from the card. Could also use it for scrapbook titling, I guess, as well. Once I've stuck all the layers down, I like to put a bit of paper on top and then something heavy to keep them in place while the glue sets. While that sets, I'll carry on working on the main card. I've got my 2 tags and some of the foam, and I'm going to stick one piece to the back of the darkest, which is going to be the shadow of the tag, I guess you'd call it. Then on the back of the lighter tag, a little glue, and then just a little at the top of the darker tag as well. I'm going to stick the lighter one on top of the darker one, and then I'll put it in position on the card front. If you're unsure where to put it, you can also use your die cut of the bow or whatever you're going to put on that end, whether it be a flower or something else, just to really get an idea of where the tags should be sitting. When it comes to the ribbon of this particular bow, I prefer to chop it into uneven lengths or uneven halves, stick those together and then put them coming out from the tags. Of course, this depends on whichever one you're using, so choose whichever you fancy. Again, only really relevant to this bow, but basically I'm folding over the edges and making sure that the ends stick together. And then I'm going to use a little peg to keep that in place again while the glue grabs. While that does, I'm going to move back to my sentiment. And I'm going to start applying the foam pads to the back. If you prefer to work with dimensional glue, you could use that as well, but basically I'm putting it wherever I think the sentiment is going to need support. A little tip when you're pulling the backs off the foam pads, if you don't want them going everywhere, roll yourself up a little bit of masking tape so the sticky is on the outside, and then as you pull off the backings, put them on the masking tape, and then roll that up and chuck it in the bin. Saves them getting everywhere. Okay, again, I'm just using my bow as a reference to get an idea of where to put the sentiment. Once I'm happy and committed, I put it down and give it a good old shove. Back to the bow, and I'm just finishing off wrapping the, what do you call it? Well, let's call it the rest of the bow around its central area. And then sticking it in place again with the peg to let that glue grab. While the glue sets on the bow, I'll just use the little turbo glue pen to apply a few little dots of glue, and then I'm going to use those to put my gems on. These are self-adhesive gems, but I find that applying a little dot of PVA glue helps them stick and stay permanently, rather than you opening the envelope and having gems as confetti instead. To stick the bow on, I'm using dimensional glue. You've probably seen this from Pinflair, but there are many other different brands available. Normally I'd use a cocktail stick, but I seem to have lost the entire pot of cocktail sticks, so I'm just using my metal pokey tool, and I will make sure to wipe that off before it has a chance to set. Just tucking the bow in so that the T looks as if it's coming out from the bow. Then I'm going to put another blob of dimensional glue in the middle of the bow. Probably a bit too much there. Could have got away with a lot less. To help me stick the large half sphere pearl. Not sure why I wanted to give that its full name there, but basically you'll know what I mean because I'm about to show you. What I did notice as I was working here was that normally I would have the bow sitting over the tags, so you wouldn't see the hole that's cut at the top of the tag. I did think of various ways of covering this with gems or a sequin or something else, but in the end what I decided to do was cut another section of that ribbon, remove the bow while the glue's still wet, and stick the extra bit of bow in and over so that it looks as if it's coming out from underneath the T of the word thanks. So I've kind of edited that a little bit, but I will show you that just now. There we go, so there's the little bit of tag. I didn't need to cut a whole section because I only wanted a bit anyway, so I put the die over the edge of the card. It's a good way of saving your cardstock. You don't always have to cut the entire shape out if you're not going to use it all. And as I mentioned, tuck it under the T and then put the bow on top. I actually really like this third tail to the ribbon tag rather than two from the original, so that's something I've learned in this one. That's it for this video. If you have enjoyed your time with me today, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for notifications of future videos. In the meantime, thank you again for watching, and I will see you hopefully next time.